Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those you don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, five-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where empowering entrepreneurs is like putting toddlers in charge of home interior design. Expect creative chaos and surprising results. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Scaling a SaaS company requires truckloads of venture capital. True or myth? Let's talk about it. Money alone doesn't guarantee growth. If it did, you just pour cash in and unicorns pop out the other side. But the truth is, with smart strategies, SaaS businesses can scale efficiently even with limited resources. So, how do you do that? Scaling a business is all about strategic growth, not just splurging on the latest tools, chasing shiny objects, or hiring a massive team. It's about smart, efficient use of current resources, whatever those are, large or small. And this is crucial because it's easy to get overwhelmed by the idea that you need more money, more people, more everything. But what if you could achieve your growth goals with less? Thousands and thousands of conversations with the founders, and the two most common roadblocks I hear are one, limited budgets, and two, manpower. It's lack of money, it's lack of people, resource constraints. And it's less a problem of lack of resources, true lack of resources, and more a function of being scrappy, being resourceful, and creative. And I get it. Especially being bootstrapped, every dollar feels stretched, and every single person is wearing a dozen hats. And here's how I've tackled that in my companies and scaled without ridiculous resources. The first is to double down on your high value niche. Resist broadening your focus prematurely. And that is so hard to do. You have to thoroughly dominate your core beachhead market first. So get in there, establish that beachhead, own that market, and then expand from there. Perfect your positioning and offering for that very, very specific small niche. And word will start spreading organically, fueling a viral expansion loop. The second is leveraging partners for reach. And this is one of my all time favorites. And anybody that's been around for any amount of time at all knows that I love partnerships. Because the last thing you want to do is build an audience from scratch. Identify strategic partners with complementary audiences. They serve the same market you do, but in a different way. They offer something that you don't or don't plan to, and then work together and co-promote each other. It has to be co. It's not one-sided, but true partnerships are both. So you're both promoting each other. Shared content amplification. So it's one of the things that we do in our webinar series. We want to promote other people that are doing really cool things in the SaaS space. The podcast does that. We promote people who do really cool things in SaaS that are not competitive, but really expands that amplification. So we share audience. Really, really good thing. And that shared content amplification expands visibility and serious credibility leverage for both. And third, we want to optimize pricing plans for expansion revenue. Last week, we did a webinar with Dan Balkowski specifically about pricing and expanding your market and how do you price for growth. Really, really cool stuff. He was on the podcast a little while back as well. But the key thing here is you want to structure your pricing tiers and packaging to incentivize viral bottom-up adoption within accounts so that you get in and you land and expand. Make it easy for champions to spread your product internally after that first purchase. As you want to continue to grow that, expand your net dollar retention. So you want that to grow and you want to expand in accounts after the initial purchase. But the truth is, pouring more money into untargeted marketing won't guarantee results. Honestly, it's a waste. And I've done a lot of that. But on the opposite side, carefully crafted growth strategies combined with fanatical customer focus will really set you up for success. Because a lot of your competitors, especially the ones that get big rounds of funding, they dump a bunch of money into dumb things. So resist spreading yourself thin that way and commit fully to your niche, whatever that is. Accelerate through partnerships, optimize for expansion revenue, price so that there's a path forward. Do that, you'll scale your impact and profits even when resources can feel a little bit limited. And capital helps, absolutely it does. There's a million ways to fund companies, but it's not the constraint. It really, really isn't. Creativity, commitment, and focus, those are the real scaling multipliers, not just dollars or not just people. Execute, execute, execute. Stay lean and leverage those strategies to grow efficiently, even on a bootstrap budget. What tips for scaling up do you have without burning piles of cash? Our expert last week was Kyle Kuderowski from Web Street and Empire Flippers. We talked about streamlining operations, building a two-sided marketplace, and bringing the ability to invest in tech to the masses. Literally anyone can get in the finance game. Power to the people. And our founder last Tuesday was Beth Nevins, founder of Developa.io. She is an experienced operator in the people and talent space and specializes in recruitment and people operations design. We talked about leadership mindset shift, especially between like the A and B stage of companies, and the best talent strategies in 2024 and beyond. If you missed either of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. Such great stuff there. My guest today is Dr. Masha Petrova, CEO of Nullspace. With a PhD in aerospace engineering, Masha brings over 15 years of leadership in engineering simulation and design software industry. She's held pivotal marketing executive roles at Ansys, Altium, and MSC Software during its acquisition by Hexagon, and played a crucial role in 3 successfully acquired simulation software startups. Amazing background. Welcome an innovator who leads global teams with excellence and a cohesive vision, Dr. Masha Petrova. Hey, Masha, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Hey, Jeff. Great to be here.
Well, I love your background. It's very, very unique. You're aerospace engineer turned marketer and now first time CEO of an engineering software firm.
Yeah, well, thank you for the compliment. I like my background too.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's unique when an engineer becomes a marketing executive and then moves on to other executives roles. That you don't see that a lot, I don't think.
No, no, and very different. So, what is an aerospace engineer and a marketer? What are the similarities there, and how have you made that transition?
Oh, great question. So my undergrad was in mechanical engineering, and then PhD was in aerospace. So it was a lot of years of engineering. And I think what's similar about the two, and I would really how I transitioned my skills from engineering to a marketing executive, is the ability to see system as a whole and the ability to really focus on details. So in marketing, specifically in branding, that's a very unique skill that a lot of really good designers will have that I was able to pick up by working with some great designers on my team. But you're paying attention to the littlest things, like the corners of the letters in the font that you're using for particular branding could be too sharp, and actually, like you look at your font for whatever it is you're branding, and you get a feeling like this is too abrasive or this is too harsh, and you don't know why. And a good designer will be able to explain to you, like, oh, do you see how the corners of the letter R are too pointed and they're stressing you out? And you go, oh wow. So starting to notice those details. Same thing with engineering. You're really paying attention to details as you're trying to solve complex problems. And I think on one hand, that attention to detail, and on the other hand, being able to, again, seeing a system as a whole. So whether it's your engineering system and how things work together, how the gears work together, shall we say, and then marketing, how your whole entire system as well is works together, how colors, fonts, words create a feeling that causes people to buy, or create a feeling that builds a certain perception of whatever it is that you're trying to market.
Without a doubt. And I love that you really have that technical expertise. You understand the problem. You understand how that whole system works. And that's a perspective that I think a lot of people don't have. But then you're also able to translate that into, you can share that with somebody else and explain how the system works, how it solves a problem. What's missing, be able to explain the gaps that you fill, which I think is a different skill set that a lot of people who have a really technical background and that detail orientation don't necessarily have that skill. So I think that that's really unique.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's been really helpful to be able to have a very logical and systematic approach to marketing, where you're able to explain something that's supposed to be all creative and about, again, you're trying to make people feel a certain way so that you're essentially designing a perception as opposed to designing a product. You're designing a perception about that product in marketing. So it's like two different aspects. And I being on both sides of it is super interesting because you can have a amazing product that you've designed and horrible marketing will kill it because you haven't built the right perception about that product. And vice versa, you can have a great example that I love to use. And this is not a horrible product. I actually really like it, but it's a company that's been purely built on marketing is, oh, I want to say death metal, not death metal, liquid death. That water that you see, right? It's been the valuation's been some insane amount of billions of dollars, and it's water. It comes out of the faucet. Actually, it does taste pretty good. The bubbles are extra fine if you taste it. But that whole brand is built on pure perception of water, if you think about it. So that's a great example of having a product that's very, very simple, didn't require a whole bunch of engineering expertise, but required a whole bunch of marketing to design the perception side of things. So it's been really neat to look at both sides and see how both sides need to work together. We can
Yeah,
touch.
it really does take both. And it takes both of those, a great product, but you have to tell that story. And even the product, I think that's such a great explanation or a great example of liquid death. It's water. But they found a way to make it interesting and sell it and market it and make it something that's desirable. So it's not just water. This
Right.
is something that's, the next level of water,
Yeah,
but it's still water.
it's fascinating, right? Or the whole example now looking at the influencer culture and how that's a whole other aspect of marketing and building perception. Now there's some craziness happens in that whole space that is probably different from regular marketing, but like the Stanley Cup craze that recently has been happening in social media. I don't know if you're familiar,
Yes.
but a Stanley Cup is not an attractive. It's a giant cup that leaks and apparently has lead in it from what some people are saying. Yet it's a form of status. It's a cup. It's the weirdest,
Right.
right? But how that perception has been built up is fascinating, and like diving into how you create that kind of like a viral craze for a product that by
Yes.
itself is not anything uh, exciting is
Right.
fascinating.
Yeah, the value of the cup is very, very small, but the desirability is off the charts.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Well, the engineering industry overall is relatively conservative. Marketing, I would say, in a lot of cases, boring, non-creative, we'll say. And you've taken that to the opposite extreme without spending, millions and millions of dollars on crazy things, but really standing out in the industry. How have you done that?
Yes, it does help when you have someone in the executive suite that could sponsor, or if you're the CMO and you're given a budget and you're given some freedom to create, that certainly does help quite a bit. But you can also do a lot with a pretty small team. So one of the things that I've done in the past, I've led, I think, a total of maybe I want to say 6 or 7 marketing teams. They weren't huge, anywhere from, 2 people to 10 people in larger companies. But one of the things that worked really well is building an internal creative agency, essentially. So in engineering, most of the time you're used to seeing companies hire out like any kind of creative brand campaigns or anything like that. They don't do a lot of it but when they do, they don't typically build in-house creative agency, meaning you have a videographer, a graphic designer, copywriter, like something you would have just an outside creative agency. So I found that you can build it internally for cheaper, and you are able to turn things around much, much faster. If it's an internal, agency, meaning you hire your own copywriter, your own videographer, your own graphic designer, even if they're maybe contractors, but they're individuals as opposed to outsourcing it to an agency. And you build it internally so that they can take your creative vision and bring it to light. And that's not standard from what I've seen in engineering software space, at least. And so one of the projects that we've done that's been probably like the epitome of my marketing career so far is a series of videos where so the company I was at before, I was VP of brand marketing at a company called Altium. They design a printed circuit board design software. Like you say that to a normal person and so we created a YouTube channel that just took off like crazy. We hired an award-winning videographer or filmmaker, I should say, actually, who did mini documentaries on our customers. And we did sometimes very light product placement, like the software would be in the background on the computer as the customer is telling their story. And it's not like your standard customer testimonials. We really made them stories about the people who were our customers. And customers were startups that developed various, like one company was called Orbit Fab, and they develop, I think, fuel stations in space is their slogan. And they were
Okay.
using the software, right? Another one was a story of a hacker. The guy was a real, like, famous hardware hacker, and he used Altium. He's not a hacker anymore. He's working for the government and things like that. um,
So good hacker.
Good hacker, yeah. But we focused on them and their stories and what it brought them to do what they do related to engineering. And then it wasn't a testimonial, it wasn't a blatant advertising of the product. And that is very, very underutilized in engineering space, probably because engineers are pretty, what's the word, literal, right? And something that's done a lot, but it worked so incredibly well. And it was a very wide reach. So not just engineers were watching these stories, parents were showing them to their kids who were interested in any kind of technology, and just people who are interested in technology in general were resonated. And so that channel blew up within a year. And YouTube channels don't usually blow up in engineering software.
Right.
I think that's probably the best
And not
example.
at the top of the list.
Yeah. That's probably the best example I could give of taking a practice that's done in consumer marketing space quite often and adopting it to the very technical B2B enterprise engineering software.
And it just makes it so much more relatable. So instead of talking about printed circuit boards and maybe features or those kinds of things, you're bringing the human element in
Yeah.
and making it interesting, well beyond just the technical aspects.
Yeah. And I think that understanding that people buy from people, and even though it's very technical software that you're selling, that's a B2B sale, you're selling one company to another. At the end, there's somebody still signs a check, somebody still signs that PO, and that's for now, it's still a human. We'll see where we'll go with this AI stuff. Maybe it'll be AI signing in the future, and then marketing would look different. But for now, it's still humans that are signing those POs, and they need to be motivated to do it. And motivation comes from feeling. No matter how much logic you put on a table, how many facts you put at the table, at the end, the person is motivated to do things, no matter what it is, because they feel a certain way. And that
Yes.
understanding that when you're doing marketing work as opposed to engineering work is important.
Oh, without a doubt. What has been the greatest challenge that you faced in really building the company and making that transition, engineer, marketing, and CEO, where now you're leading it all?
Oh yeah, CEO is a whole other can of worms. Someone made a joke about startup CEOs that when you either, if you don't already have ADHD, you will develop it as a CEO, because you have to deal with so many different diverse things, which on one hand I absolutely love, probably because I have ADHD to begin with. Looking at your books and trying to organize your accounting and QuickBooks, to jumping to brand evaluation, what your branding looks like, to getting on a call with your lawyer because you need to get an agreement together for a customer, to getting on a call with a customer and talking through their problems, to dealing with your, you know, HR issues and a new hire or someone you need to let go or a whole slew of things all in one day. So it does feel like sometimes
Right.
you've developed multiple personalities, you know, at the end of the day. It's like, who am I?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's been definitely a fascinating journey. But what probably one of the challenges dealing with transition from very technical engineering side of things to marketing, and you know, I went into the marketing executive role, so either vice president or C-suite. So especially when you're leading organizations, it's budgets. I think making sure that you have a budget to do what you need to do, because so often in B2B technical organizations, and again, that's my experience, unlike consumer space, marketing is seen like as a last thing. And it's the first thing to when budget cuts come around, the first thing to get cut is all the marketing stuff, you know, and branding is like the first thing to go. And what my workaround for that was to make sure that I had budgets so that I could build my teams and actually do cool things, was to have two marketing tracks. One would be my actual marketing, external marketing, my job, and the other one is to do an internal marketing. So that would be always keeping track of who my internal stakeholders are, and that's just not just your boss or the CEO of the company that needs to give you a budget, but that's all the other people that would say, hey, yeah, we need to give more money to marketing. So sales, having a really tight relationship with sales and making sure they understand all the value that you're bringing. That's constant communication. That could be sending them emails, talking to them, getting them on the phone, um, sending any kind of statistics or success stories for the sales team, like, hey, look, so
Yeah.
and so account manager closed this sale because they were able to send our case study that we did over to a customer. And then having the same tight relationship with development as well, because they are the ones that will, or development or the engineering, the R&D side of things, they are the ones that would give you information on what's coming up. They will translate the features into a big picture for you, which is very hard sometimes. And I think one of the challenges that happens in these like B2B technical companies is there's a very large disconnect between engineering development side of things, the product side of things, and
Yeah.
marketing, right? Because no one is bothering to build that relationship. And so the engineers are just throwing statistics over the fence, features over the fence, and marketing is like, oh, okay, well, we don't understand engineering, so it must mean something, right? This B squared epsilon must mean something. So we're just going to put that and then put some marketing fluff around it, which just is cringy and frustrates the engineers, and customers hate it. And then marketing is frustrated because they're like, well, we don't know what they're giving us. Building that really tight relationship with the engineering and R&D side of things, and making sure that you go out of your way to, so that they go out of their way to explain what the feature means, why it's significant to the customer, and how you can present it in a way that's meaningful, interesting, relevant to the customers, right? So that's a lot of internal work. I would say at
Yes.
40% of my work as a marketing executive was internal marketing, is getting all the stakeholders on board to make sure that my budgets were approved the next year and my hires were approved. So I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah. So how do you create that unified vision among those teams? And because you've got multiple disciplines in there, but then also global on top of that.
Yes.
So people from different backgrounds and cultures, how do you get that unified vision across the entire organization?
Yeah, it's hard. So there is the philosophical approach that I think you have to accept, is that number one is that a large part of your time will go to internal marketing, will go to internal branding, meaning making sure that the organization as a whole knows what your department is doing, what marketing is doing, and why it's valuable. And that's not the easiest thing to do. And it's not just like sending an email out every once in a while. It's making sure that all those different organizations, especially globally, receive your message. And so what's been interesting, and you run into all kinds of interesting situations when you're working with global teams, right? Because there's unique things to each region, to different countries, that what happened? I've had a few examples. I can't come up with any right now, but there's a few examples where we did a marketing campaign, and someone from France would email us and say like, "There's no way this is going to fly here. Like, you need to change it." Or and in India or in our China office or something like that, and we had to redo it. Or oh, I know, one time it was, I don't remember which one of the companies it was, but I think it was one of the larger global companies that I worked for as head of marketing, and we did some sort of campaign, and we had an India office, and we would usually send the campaign packages out to different offices, and they would localize them.
Yes, yes.
Right? So localization would mean translating, obviously, but not just translating, also making sure that any kind of innuendos in that particular country are taken into
Yes.
account, and to make sure it's culturally appropriate and so on. And so an ad, or our campaign, and there was like an ad was part of it, came back to us from India. And it was, we had very specific brand colors. I don't remember what it was. Let's say red, white, and black was, standard brand colors. And it was on theme with that brand. And it came back and it was like pink and yellow and orange, and like all the colors of the rainbow were thrown to this ad. And, and we went back to him and said, "What in the world is this? Like, this is not on brand." And, the office told us like, "But yes, but that's what our audience responds to. We're used to a lot more color. And, pink is
Mm.
not just a female color, it's totally fine for both men and women to be associated with pink," for example. You run into interesting stories like that.
Yes, yes. Ready to future proof your company and scale to new heights? Dive into the ultimate resource designed for SaaS founders and C suite executives. Champion Leadership Group gives you an unfair advantage in scaling up revenue and outwitting competitors. Imagine solving your biggest scaling headaches and hitting 5, 10, 20 million ARR and beyond with ease. We take away the guesswork and the grunt work and replace it with framework by supporting you with our on demand fractional C suite team, a powerful operating system built into software, and a thriving community of fellow scaling founders. That's how we make it happen. If you're stuck at your current revenue level, this is your ticket out. Feel like your company is the world's best kept secret? We amplify your success. And hey, if you're already crushing it, but too busy to breathe, I hear that all the time, will free up 20% of your time in the first month. Now is the time to upgrade from traction to scale. If you're ready to work smarter and not just grind harder, schedule a 10-minute growth brainstorm. It's free. We'll pinpoint the number one thing blocking revenue. Visit championleadership.com, where leaders evolve and companies transform. Yeah, that is interesting. Just thinking about how it would be perceived around the world and just different cultural differences. And so making sure that it is relatable when you're talking about localization, it really is. It is what is going to resonate in that particular environment.
Yes.
Well, thinking about that, just the colors and the creativity. Pink isn't just a woman's color, and then that's exactly right. But when we look at the tech space overall,
Mhm.
it seems like maybe there's a lack of diversity, and that's changing, and which is pretty exciting. But especially when we look at tech startups for women and minorities still lagging behind, and really excited to see founders like you doing amazing things. What can we do to make that happen more?
That's a great question, and I've been thinking about it for a while. It's challenging because in technology, you need certain set of skills that you can only get through certain amount of school, and you can't shortcut it, right? Like, while you can become a writer with just purely talent and no classes, and you can write things that lots of people will read. Same thing with art or music. You could be self-taught,
Sure.
or certain types of music, right? You could be self-taught and you can create amazing pieces of art and music and so on. You could argue that like, well, yeah, but with education and practice, you create much better pieces. Sure, but at the same time, you can be very creative with no formal education, right? With
Sure.
engineering, at least, and the hard scientists, there's no way to shortcut it. You have to get
Right.
through certain number of years of engineering theory in order to be able to design engineering things. in order to be able to design experiments properly, know how to measure them, how to collect data, and how to base conclusions on that data in science, you have to go through your 4 years of undergrad and your whatever of grad school if you're going to be doing more advanced things. So if you have a smaller pool of minorities and women who are going through these programs, you just don't have access to them afterwards. So I think, in my opinion, and that could be, it's just my opinion, I think it's the culture of either or. At least I can speak about the women in tech, for example. I can't speak about all minorities, obviously, but I can talk about my experience as a
Sure.
female. So I grew up in Soviet Union. Growing up in Soviet Union, there was a culture of, because everyone was equal, because it was communism, right? Not saying
Right.
that was great at all. But one thing that came out of it was equality meant that men and women could do the same things, period. And what happened, one good thing I think happened is there was like this the difference between, being a woman and being in technology and getting a PhD, let's say, or a really advanced degree in technology, were not mutually exclusive at all. Like, it wasn't that rare in Soviet Union. And if you think about the transition when the revolution happened in whatever 1917 or whatever it was in the beginning of that century, and how quickly that change happened to all of a sudden men and women were equal, at least in that perspective, being
Right.
scientists, engineers, is pretty amazing. And so when I was growing up, there was no, let's see, I'm trying to figure out how to describe it. People did not have a problem with a woman wanting to, let's say, dress a certain way, be very girly, right? Like clothes, like makeup, like friends, and be very standard, like girly girl, as you would call here in US, and then go
Sure.
get a PhD. Like, it wasn't they weren't mutually exclusive. Where here,
Yeah.
it's such a huge gap, and, like, especially with social media, you could see there's so much focus on the appearance, and as a female, you're either kinda, like, funneled. You're either funneling into the appearance side of things, and you care about your appearance and makeup and clothes and all of that, or you're the nerdy girl who, doesn't care what she looks like, doesn't brush her hair, uh, and but you're very smart, and they're mutually exclusive, and that's the whole entire culture, and it's very pervasive here in US, and that was very
Mm.
shocking kind of to, like, run into when I moved. So I moved here when I was 12, and I think that needs to change first. Because, we have to get rid of this dichotomy of, you either are very focused on looks or you're very focused on your brain. It's part of the same body, like
Yeah. Yeah.
the brain is still a organ like your arm. I don't know if that answers your question. That's a very lengthy theory that I just gave you.
It does, and I think it's really interesting and makes a lot of sense, and I've never heard anybody say it like that before. And it just in thinking about it, and it completely resonates because there is, and it seems like it's like, probably junior high into high school, you have this diversion of, 2 different paths, and I'm just thinking, why is that? 'Cause it doesn't make sense. There's no reason for it to be that way. They're not mutually exclusive, but you're right. Culturally, it seems like there is definitely a difference there.
Yeah.
How do we bridge that gap?
Well, that's $1 million question of my pay grade.
Yeah. That's a good question to ask because I think the more you think about that and listeners as well, I mean, the answers will come. But, certainly, encouraging, people that have those gifts and talents to pursue them.
Yeah.
And making it that available to education. I think education is becoming more available, more accessible, and whether that's online, whether it's, online classes or lots and lots of community colleges, getting more traction. Degrees don't have to cost a fortune. They're sometimes the ones that are more local are even better. But, just making that accessibility, I think, and just encouraging people to pursue what they're really, really good at.
Yeah, maybe just starting to think about that again. Maybe for me, I was able to make a transition from engineering to marketing, and I
Yes.
able to see the similarities between two kind of like areas that you think are mutually exclusive, I should say, or very
Yeah,
different.
a lot of
I
times.
I think maybe looking at a human being in the same way, where you're still a whole person, whatever part of your brain works, it doesn't mean the other one can't, and just for
Right.
to start thinking about those things. And I think, overall, engineering degrees are hard, science degrees are hard, grad
Yes.
school is even harder, and just the culture being so instant gratification and wanting to feel good all the time, people are getting I'm going to sound so old. People are just not used to doing hard things anymore. If something is hard, they tend to like stop doing it. And that I don't know how to change. All I know is that it's still extremely rewarding. I would not give up my engineering PhD for anything. Was it really, really hard? Absolutely. Did I still enjoy it even though it was a difficult process? I did. But
Yeah.
I don't know if that's dying off in our culture, like the enjoyment of doing something, of overcoming challenges. Yeah, that's a
I hope not.
question.
Yeah. I hope not, but I have seen that. And, it's part of the process. It's doing hard things, sometimes just because they're hard, and getting to the other side, and it's that accomplishment. And it could be a small goal, it could be, running a mile, it could be running a marathon. It could be, getting a degree. That takes a lot of perseverance and really just overcoming, but I think that prepares you for the business world, especially leading an organization. If you give up when things get hard, yeah, entrepreneurship is not the right place.
That's true. That is true. For sure. Yeah, if you wanna get really beat up, try and go into entrepreneurship.
Right, right.
We're in the process of raising venture capital right now, and so it's a lot of rejection from investors. I heard
Yeah,
somewhere some statistic that for every $500,000 that you're looking to raise for your company, you need to get rejected like 100 times or talk to 100 different VCs or something like that. And so it is rough, especially when you've got a
yes,
million other things as an entrepreneur in an early stage company. You're talking to customers, you're building the company, building your operations, you're onboarding people, it's like a million things you need to be doing. And if on top of it, every day you're getting rejected by by investors, it's definitely rough, but um, I'm
yeah.
having a blast at the same time. So it just
That's
depends.
great. Yeah, it seems like you're very well equipped for that, and up for the challenge. What has been the most challenging thing that you've overcome, as a leader?
The most challenging thing, I'd say I'm still in the process, right? I don't know if I've overcome it, but probably one of the hardest thing that you start to run into as you start to lead, right? Whatever that looks like in your large organization, as an entrepreneur, and so on, you will have a whole variety of opinions thrown at you. There will be people who are higher up the rank that you that will tell you that you need to do or not do certain things. That will be your peers that will tell you that you need to do or not do certain things. There will be the audience, the customers, a whole bunch of people who will have an opinion about what you need to do and not do. And I think distinguishing between which opinions to take seriously and which ones to just let roll off of you, even though it could be really, really hard, is super critical. And I can't say that I've
Yes,
overcome that, but that's probably been the hardest thing to get used to. And the higher up you go, right? Like the more people you lead, the harder it becomes. Now, if you're
yes.
right, like you're a psychopath, let's say, where you literally do not care about people's opinions because you just don't care about people's feelings, it's much easier. And that's probably why, there's some statistic floating out there that, 20% of CEOs are psychopaths or something like that. I can see why. Much easier. Because if you're a normal human being that cares about other human beings, you will care about their opinion to some extent. And it's much harder to when you get criticism, right? To
Yes.
and to distinguish between some criticism is good, some criticism you want to take, and some you just need to let roll off of you.
Yeah. So how do you make that distinction of who you let really speak into your life and give you that input that you take, and others that you say, this is, you can have an opinion, but it's not for here.
Oh, that's a whole art, I think. And I think every person has to decide for themselves. For me Personally, I look at the source. Where is this opinion coming from? Well, first of all, how does that make me feel? If it makes me feel good, I'll take it from any source, right?
There you go.
If it's a criticism, look at the source. It's like, okay, is that a person who has experience with what they're telling me? Personal experience. Is that a person so for example, as an entrepreneur, if you're raising funding, there will be lots of people who will give you opinions about your pitch deck. So you have your,
Yes.
right?
Oh, yes.
Pitch deck is your PowerPoint presentation that you pitch to investors. And people will give you all kinds of advice. And what I've learned to distinguish is unless the person has raised venture capital themselves, not just angel funding, but venture capital themselves, their opinion, it's a nice to have. Like you could take it or leave it type of thing. If they give you something useful and you go, oh, that's useful. If they tell you something and you think, that doesn't resonate, let it go. They have not raised capital themselves. They don't know. It's a whole different beast. Even though they might have been, an entrepreneur themselves and built multiple company themselves, but if they have not raised VC funding, their opinion, again, you could leave it. So,
Yeah.
as an example, so number one is, has that person had experience with what advice they're giving you? And number two is that a person that you want to emulate? Because sometimes you
Mm.
look at them and go, you know what, I do not want to be anything like you. So why would I take your opinion?
Yeah, that's good.
One time, I'll give you another story. Just
Yes.
speaking of women in technology. I was at a large public company. I was leading a marketing team, and we had a big marketing meeting, and it was very heated because there was a new marketing leader that was trying to take over, and then the old marketing leader was like in the way, and then I was trying to I had my own agenda set up. And I was working with a VP in like another area of the company who was great, who came into this meeting, and he was very supportive. And so we had like a strategy because we wanted to accomplish certain things in this meeting. And the meeting was very heated. So there was like a lot of adrenaline, a lot of testosterone. And there was a couple of women in that meeting, and one woman couldn't take it. She like I so like I'm fine in aggressive situations. It's just the way I'm built. And I knew we were trying to get certain results done, and so things got heated, over, we weren't screaming at each other, but it was very, for lack of better words, like an MMA fight, but it was all professional and fine, but it was a tough environment. And so one woman
Yeah.
couldn't take it and she started crying. She ran out of the room, completely unprofessional. It was, this is one of the problems is that why women get a bad reputation in this space. And so there's some other women that felt bad for her, and just they couldn't take the intensity of that meeting. Again, nobody was screaming. It was like nothing unprofessional, but it was just intense opinions. So after we left that meeting, we actually accomplished our goals. I thought it was a great meeting. One of the women who was a leader for about 10 years, she was leading an engineering organization, but she was in the same role for entire 10 or 15 years, like same exact role. She didn't change. She said, "Hey, Masha, can we go get lunch? Like we met before a few times, but she's like, since we're here, can we go get some food after the meeting? I'd love to talk to you." I said, "Yeah, sure." Not expecting anything, like happy to build a relationship with her. So we go to meeting. I'm very happy about how the meeting turned out. We go to this lunch together, and we sit down, and she goes, "Hey, I'm going to give you some advice." Mind you, I didn't ask for any advice. And I go, "Oh, okay, I thought we were just having a lunch, but okay."
Yeah.
Like, that was a very intense meeting, and you were way too harsh, and like you really should have been more diplomatic, and you really like you should have backed off. So she started to tell me like I shouldn't have done I didn't do any, again, nothing bad happened. I was just firm with what we needed, and we got it. And so she was telling me like that was too scary for her. She felt uncomfortable. Like other women
Mm.
felt uncomfortable that I was pursuing my whatever it is I was pursuing in that meeting. And so she's like, I'm going to give you this unsolicited advice. You need to be softer. You shouldn't be pushing like this. And I was sitting there thinking like, I wanted to say like, who the heck are you? But then I thought about it. I didn't say anything, and I listened to her, and I thought, here's someone who's been in the same role for 15 years. She's clearly not moving because she's comfortable. She likes to be comfortable. And I made her uncomfortable
Yeah.
in that meeting. Okay, I can flip out on her and tell her to go to a certain place. and just
Yeah.
think of that relationship, or just understand she's coming from a very different place, and I don't want me to be anything like her. So I don't have to change anything about myself. And so I told her, I appreciate it, and like, thank you for telling me just advice and whatever. We moved on, but I didn't change anything about myself. But I also build a relationship with her still. So it's probably a long story, but
That's good. That self-awareness, I think, is helpful and just understanding, very insightful. Understanding where that advice came from and well-meaning and good intentions, but you go, "Thanks, not for me," and move on. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that.
yeah, I don't. What works for me. I think it's pragmatic approach.
Well, that worked out. Have you ever encountered a situation where the initial approach didn't yield the desired result? That's the engineering world. You do experiments, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. How have you adapted in the business world, and what have you learned from that adaptation?
Yeah, that happens all the time. Same thing with marketing. You're doing experiments. That's another correlation
Sure,
between marketing and engineering. You're experimenting. It's just that there is not a rigorous process for experimenting.
things don't blow up if
Well,
marketing goes bad.
you ever seen PR disasters? Sometimes they blow up.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yes, without a doubt.
Yeah,
You doctor a photo, and then it blows up.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. No, things can certainly blow up. I think because there is not a rigorous process, sometimes you get blunders or people who don't know what they're doing and call it marketing. And
Sure.
it's hard to catch that on the marketing side as opposed to engineering. But you're still experimenting. And yeah, I've had so many failures. Honest, I don't remember them all. Luckily, I don't have the best memory, so I just forget things a lot. So failures, I tend to just forget. But I think the strategy that I adopt is sometimes after a really big failure. Let's say you were working on a customer or getting a customer onboarded for a long time, and then all of a sudden they say no, thank you, or you've been working with an investor for a while and they turn you down. There's
Yeah.
plenty of those stories, and some of them can hurt like a punch in the gut because they just been, or you've launched a marketing campaign, you worked a lot on it, and it just didn't go anywhere. It just fell completely flat. Nothing happened, and that could be gut wrenching. And I think the best thing that works for me, that might work for some people as well, is you mope for a little bit. You could take a day and mope and like be able to just sit there and it's like, I can't even lift a finger. I'm so like all the wind's been knocked out of me. I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna watch TikTok or I don't know, play Candy Crush or whatever and just not move. And that's what I'm gonna do today. And tomorrow I'm gonna get some good night's sleep. I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna look at my to-do list and I'm gonna cross one thing off. And I'm gonna cross another thing off. And I'm gonna, putting one foot in front of the other. Just gonna take one step at a time. I'm not gonna think about where I'm going, how far I need to go. All I need to do is take one foot and put it in front of the other. And that works very well for me when overcoming, flops.
Oh, that's really good advice and a great approach. Yeah, I think we all go through that. Things that don't work, and that's part of the entrepreneurial journey. Is
Yes.
we try things and they don't work, and it's picking up and going on. I think resilience is a key skill
Yeah, doing
to
those hard
develop.
things, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and it happens over and over again, and we get up and we try again, and we get up and we try again.
Yeah, and I think remembering that most of the things you do will fail. That's the whole point. If you're not failing, then you're not doing enough. Because you have to be trying so many things. Most of them will not work. And every once in a while something sticks and you go, yay! And that's how the company gets built.
It's great. Well, where can we learn more about you and about Null Space online?
Sure. So my company is called Null Space. It's engineering simulation for electromagnetics software. So engineering software for electrical engineers and RF engineers. And our company is www.nullspaceinc.com. And you could find me on LinkedIn, Masha V. Petrova on LinkedIn.
Outstanding. And we'll make sure and link all of that in the show notes. And Masha, wonderful conversation. Thank you for being on SaaS Fuel.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Thanks for letting me tell my stories. I appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Thanks again, Masha, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. Wow, she is a brilliant founder in a really complex and competitive industry and doing incredible things. Huge, huge respect. You can learn more about Masha and Nullspace at nullspaceinc.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. Full episodes, video shorts, training, lots of stuff out there for you. Your thought leaders share. So pass this podcast along to another business leader who might be inspired by Masha. I am, and I'll bet you are too. So pay that forward. Everyone who shares this week gets a Planet Pong paddle. This isn't your average ping pong paddle. It's designed to bounce messages off satellites, play a game of interstellar ping pong, or just confuse your neighbors with your out of this world backhand. Join us Thursday on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, where my guest is Bob Kawabe, financial expert who works with successful, self-made, family-oriented business owners and helps them transform to live what he calls their soul purpose in life. That's soul, S-O-U-L. Very, very cool. Bob is amazing, and you'll love this episode. And next Tuesday, we have founder Masoud Alabash, founder and CEO of Amadeus, an AI-powered project management and collaboration tool. You'll love the idea and mindset driving this multi-time founder to create the future of human and machine communication. Very, very cool stuff. I will see you next time, and as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/saasfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.